Hi, my name is Chido Onumah. I'm the coordinator of the African Center for Media and Information Literacy. So, Mr. Richard is a staff of the works sector of the Federal Ministry of Works and Housing, who exposed fraudulent employment practices in the institution, and he made this public. From our findings, we observed that for this his courageous act, he suffered retaliation in form of punitive posting from the appointment unit, where he first uncovered the employment scam to open registry, and then he was moved to the headquarters to Gwagwalada, in part of Abuja. And I think it was on Thursday or Friday, he actually called me to say that he went to the office in Gwagwalada and he was assaulted. That really enraged us, and that led us to wanting to reach the minister immediately. He told us that he was assaulted by some aggrieved staff of the ministry. So that's really this case. I think it was on Monday, exactly a week ago. The case broke. It was first reported by one of the national newspapers, and we picked it up. And it turns out that the whistleblower is close to somebody who is a friend of the organization, and they reached out to us to say this is what is happening. This guy did this. He petitioned, reporting the case of employment scam. People being given employment and they've been collecting salaries for the past 2 years or so without. They don't have the qualification. They are not authentic staff of the ministry, and so on. And instead of dealing with this, they set up a committee. At the end of the day, what the committee came up with was a terrible recommendation, in the sense that it now recommended that those senior officers who were involved in the process should be redeployed. They will stop the salaries of these fake staff, and that Mr. Richard, by pushing this information to the public, he has exposed, or he has made public information that he wasn't privy to. And he's been punished for that. So that's basically what's going on. But from what has happened in the last 1 week, today we read report that 24 ghost workers, that they are stopping the salaries of 24 ghost workers in the Ministry of Works. We read that the reports that they were going to sack. Even when you hear such words, you begin to wonder, because these are not authentic staff of the ministry. So when you say you're going to remove them, how did they get there in the first place? Somebody needs to pay the price for this crime that has been committed. So that's basically where we are. Somebody exposed fake employment policies or action of certain individuals in the Ministry of Works and Housing, and you set up a panel, and at the end of the day, he's the one who is being punished, rather than those who committed the crime. The whistleblower is the one, and they are putting up all kinds of irrelevant legislation and laws that do not support the punishments that they are meting out to this person. And as I mentioned before, as an organization, as part of the civil society group in the country that has really taken interest in this case, we are appalled, extremely appalled by the silence, by the attitude of the Minister of Works and Housing, the fact that he's allowing this to happen and is allowing these criminals to get away with murder. Well, the whistleblowing policy in Nigeria was put in place in December 2016 as one of the attempts by the current administration to strengthen the fight against corruption. So it came about through after an executive council meeting in December 2016. the government passed, the Federal Executive Council approved the policy. The background to it is that it had been months of consultation and research by the Presidential Advisory Committee Against Corruption, headed by Professor Isesage. And then the executive secretary then was Professor Bolaji Owosanye, who now is the chairman of ICPC. I think in the planning meeting, once the commission or committee rather was set up in the early days of the current administration, they submitted the proposal after their tour around the world, looking at best practices and what works best in terms of expanding the frontiers of the fight against corruption. So whistleblowing was one of the ideas that they pushed to the government, and the government accepted it and ultimately put in place the policy. So the policy, as I said, was approved by the Federal Executive Council in December 2016. It will be 6 years this year, and it's housed in the Ministry of Finance, Budget, and National Planning, and it's led by a unit called the Presidential Initiative on Continuous Audits, PICA. The policy, it's basically what policies are about in terms of putting the ground rules or framework for the idea of the government in terms of what they hope to achieve in the fight against corruption. In the initial stage of the policy, of course, we saw some traction, which led to recoveries of large sums of money, whether it was in the Koyi Gate scandal or the one involving the former managing director of NNPC and so on. But like many things Nigerian, it suddenly took a different turn. So at the level of AfricMil, my organization as a civil society organization, we started working around the whistleblowing policy, or rather whistleblowing projects, by early 2007. And over time, we've collaborated with PICA, worked with the Ministry of Finance, Budget, and National Planning to increase advocacy around whistleblowing, to also strengthen the policy itself, but more importantly, to protect whistleblowers, which is the core area of our work. And over time, we've handled many cases of whistleblowing, from the case of Umtia Thompson at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to the case of the fellow at the Police Service Commission, to a couple of others that also involved the current Minister of Works and Housing, unfortunately, when he was Minister of Power, in addition to the current portfolio he holds now. There were cases involving staff of Embed, staff of the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria, and so on. So over time, the policy has had its ups and downs. It's something positive, but again, like many of the policies that are put in place in Nigeria, it has been run by individuals, sometimes who do not have the capacity to run these things or do not have the political will to make the kind of change that is required happen. Then it leads to a situation where what we see more often than not is just a low response, both from the government and from even the citizens in terms of whistleblowing. The greatest challenge, of course, is the fact that there is no enabling legislation. So people, last year, for example, we did a nationwide survey where people were quite critical of the policy, in that at the end of the day, people do not feel protected because there is no law to back up the efforts at fighting corruption using the whistleblowing mechanism. So this is, like, in summary, what the policy is about, where we are today, and the efforts of African as an organization in interfacing with the policy. Well, again, let me start by commending the efforts of the whistleblower. I'd like to describe him as a very courageous, patriotic citizen. Not many people in Nigeria, present in Nigeria, would do what we feel the need for him to be recognized, for him to be encouraged, really rightly. I don't think he has committed any offense. He enjoys protection under section, as well as the fundamental rights of free expression, including the right to receive and impart information under Section 39(1) of the 1999 Constitution. So people can pull off anything they want to pull off, whether it's the Official Secret Acts or any other thing. Official Secret Act has to do with issues around talking about threats to national security and so on. We are talking about an issue that is in the public interest. Even the Freedom of Information Act of 2011 protects the whistleblower because it provides immunity for public officers against any form of civil or criminal proceedings for the disclosure in good faith, which is essentially what this the action of Mr. Richard is. This disclosure in his good faith. So there is nothing wrong. He hasn't done anything wrong. I think those who are putting him through this terrible ordeal are just being mischievous. They are being callous. And we are appalled by the fact that we have in Mr. Fashola, a senior advocate of Nigeria, a former governor, two-term governor of Lagos State and minister in his second term, that this is happening under his watch. The same thing happened when Fashola was in the ministry of, when power was part of his portfolio, when we had to deal with cases of whistleblowers in the Nigerian Bulk Electricity Trading PLC, MBET. The same thing happened then to when, during his first term as minister, when we had to deal with whistleblowing cases of people in the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria, where internal auditors who didn't want to be part of the malfeasance and corruption going on in the ministry blew the whistle. And under Fashola's watch, these people were thrown under the bus, so to say, and they were allowed to suffer and continue to suffer. But the case of Dr. Murtala Ibrahim is extremely pathetic. He's gone to court. The court has ruled in his favor. The ministry refused. They set up a committee. Board members refused to implement the decision of the court. They went to the National Assembly, specifically the House Committee. I don't remember exactly the name of the committee now that looked into the case, but we were there on the occasion where they brought the relevant stakeholders in that case. The committee recommended that the whistleblower should be called back to work. Nothing has happened. It's been on now for almost 3 years, if I'm not mistaken. The case is currently at the Federal National Industrial Court. And so now we have this again. To think that under Fashola's watch, Mr. Richard exposed the wrongdoings, employment fraud, the cartel. Of course, it's nothing new. It's not just in that ministry. It's happening everywhere. But for somebody to have the courage in present-day Nigeria to do that, and instead of rewarding him, you now set up punitive measures, set up a panel that recommended that he be sacked. Just today, we got information that about 24 people with fake employment in the ministry are going to be removed from the payroll, and you begin to wonder, these are people who have committed criminal acts. These are the people who ought to be punished for their criminal conduct. But that's not happening. You post those who were part of the crime, you redeploy them, and the person who exposed the crime, you are punishing him unjustly. So it's really terrible, and we feel particularly appalled that this thing is happening under Fashola's watch, and we are going to use everything within our power, within the laws of this country, to ensure that justice is served.